You'd think the deadliest battles of World War II were fought with bullets, bombs and tanks, but often the real fight was for something far simpler: water. In the heat of North Africa, the damp jungles of the Pacific and the ruins of Europe, soldiers found themselves more threatened by thirst and disease than by enemy fire. When supply lines broke and canteens ran dry, they didn't just give up. They turned engineers overnight, building makeshift filtration systems that kept them alive when no rescue was coming. This wasn't some secret weapon or government-issued gadget. It was a trick so simple and so effective that modern hikers and survivalists could still learn from it today. By 1942, the deserts of North Africa had turned into a furnace. Temperatures reached over 120 degrees Fahrenheit, and water convoys were constantly ambushed or destroyed. German and British soldiers carried 20-litre cans of water that evaporated almost as quickly as it was filled. American troops fighting in the Pacific had the opposite problem. There was water everywhere, but almost none of it was safe to drink. Pools and streams shimmered under the jungle canopy, but they were laced with parasites, leeches, and disease. Dysentery and typhoid could rip through a platoon faster than gunfire. Out there, clean water meant survival, and innovation became a matter of instinct. So, how did they do it? The trick was born out of desperation, but built on timeless physics. It started with something every soldier could find: sand, gravel, and a bit of pressure. They'd grab an empty container, anything from a mess tin to an ammunition box, and layer it with what they had. The bottom held coarse stones, the middle was packed with sand, and the top was covered with a scrap of cloth torn from a uniform or a sock. The setup looked crude, but when water was poured through it, something remarkable happened. The sand and gravel acted as a natural filter, trapping silt, mud, and most of the floating debris that made water dangerous to drink. Gravity, or sometimes muscle power, did the rest. Soldiers discovered that if they poured from a bit of height or applied pressure by squeezing the container, the water flowed faster through the sand, leaving clearer liquid below. It wasn't laboratory-grade purification, but it was a lifeline. This basic filtration mirrored the principles behind large-scale field units, like the US Army's EARD later, a cumbersome mobile plant that cleaned up to 3,000 gallons per hour. The soldiers' DIY version was just its stripped-down cousin, portable, quick, and good enough to keep them moving. Filtering alone wasn't enough. Clear water could still be deadly. That's where heat came in, and it wasn't optional. Every army manual drilled the same message. If you can't trust your source, boil it. In the field, soldiers would pour their filtered water into a canteen cup or mess tin and set it over their stoves. British troops had the small Tommy cooker, a compact hexamine-fueled unit barely strong enough to warm tea, but with patience it could bring water to a rolling boil. American GIs used folding pocket stoves that burned fuel tablets, often scavenged or rationed. Even German soldiers improvised with alcohol burners made from tin cans. Once the water boiled for a few minutes, most microbes and pathogens were dead. Let it cool, and it was as safe as any bottled brand today. What made this method brilliant was how it used the environment instead of fighting it. Sand and gravel were everywhere, and every soldier carried some way to create heat: matches, stoves, or even engine parts that got scorching hot under the sun. They didn't have fancy membranes or carbon filters, but they understood the principles: Remove the visible filth, then kill the invisible killers. Simple, scalable, and endlessly repeatable. Now you might be thinking, surely modern filters are better. And yes, they're smaller, faster, and can remove almost everything down to viruses. But they rely on cartridges, pressure pumps, or chemical tablets that eventually run out. The World War II trick doesn't. It needs only what nature and resourcefulness provide. Sand filters don't clog easily, boiling doesn't wear out. And when you're far from help, the ability to make clean water from scratch is priceless. In survival training today, military instructors still teach versions of this same method, sometimes layering charcoal or fine ash to improve taste and performance. But the foundation remains identical. You know, when technology fails, simplicity wins. The refill trick also saves soldiers from carrying excessive weight. Water is heavy, about 2 pounds per litre. A fully packed soldier could carry up to 70 pounds of gear, and every ounce mattered. By learning to refill safely from local sources, troops could move lighter and farther. That meant a faster march, a better shot at survival, and less dependence on fragile supply chains. In many ways, this one practical hack was just as important as any rifle or radio in the field. There's a quiet lesson buried in this story. In an age where we've got purification bottles that can clean water in seconds and filters made with space-grade polymers, the most reliable method is still one that's over 80 years old, and arguably thousands of years older than that. You see, soldiers didn't invent sand and heat filtration. They rediscovered it under pressure. It's proof that when survival is on the line, the simplest science often beats the most advanced tech. So, next time you head outdoors, or even just think about emergency preparedness, remember the World War II refill trick. It's not romantic or high-tech, but it's real, it worked, and honestly, it still does. You can build a working filter with what's around you, and if you can make a flame, you can make water safe. That's not just history, it's knowledge that still saves lives. World War II left behind countless stories of courage, invention, and resilience. This humble water trick might not sound heroic, but it quietly saved thousands who would have otherwise fallen to thirst and disease. It shows that ingenuity doesn't always need new tools, just the will to use old ones wisely. If you found this story valuable, don't let it vanish into history. Hit that subscribe button, share it with someone who loves forgotten wartime ingenuity, and join us here on the Forgotten War fronts, where the small hacks that changed history get the spotlight they deserve.